Hi, I'm Michelle Olivier, and you're listening to Hey, I Want Your Job, the podcast that looks at amazing jobs and what it takes to get them. Welcome to Hey, I Want Your Job. And today, I do not want your job, Reketta. I'm sorry. But I do think your job is amazing, and I'm so glad you have it. And one of the things that I am going to spoiler alert tell everybody that I already love is I was just asking Reketta, is there anything that you don't want to talk about? And she was like, when it comes to fighting for people's lives, everything is on the table, and that makes me the happiest. So, with that very cryptic disclaimer, Reketta Peterson, what's your job title?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for having me on your wonderful show. My name is Reketta. Pronouns are she and her. And I am a licensed professional counselor. And also, why I'm really here today is I am a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, health educator.
Okay.
Should I keep going? You want to ask me?
Oh, yeah, no, tell me more, because you have an amazing
I'm going to tell
counseling
you more.
Right. So
Okay.
let's talk about Aspire. Let's start there. Tell the people what Aspire is, what Aspire does, and what that it's all about.
Yes. So as a therapist, I have a virtual practice that I created because my previous job was for me like a shit show towards the end. I felt like I had just had a child in 2020. So yes, I had a pandemic baby and I felt pushed out. I also felt like I was accosted by a white male co-worker and I had to leave because I went to my supervisors and no one wanted to hear me and see me as a Black woman. And so I was like, you know what? I'm better than this. It's time for me to go. And I have not looked back since. Honestly, I have not. It's just been amazing to work for myself, to be in that space. I'm naming that because that's the reason why I also do the BIPOC health equity education. A part of the reason why we're seeing health disparities is that people of color are stressed out in the workforce, and that comes into your life as different things. It can come in a physiological sense of high blood pressure. Stress is there for you. It can also come in the sense of depression. That's the whole reason why also there's therapy. And so there's so many reasons why a part of being a person of color in this country is intertwined with health and the disparities that we see.
I love everything you just said. I want to unpack it a little bit more. Let me lay some groundwork, and then I'm going to just let you go and pontificate. So I do a lot of work with job seekers so I work with what I can say both sides of the desk, right? So I work with companies, their HR teams and their hiring teams, et cetera, to make those not suck and to be fair, equitable, et cetera. And then I work with job seekers and help them navigate those. And one of the things that just really chaps my damn hide is when I hear people talk about toxic culture, because I think that toxic culture ascribes no agency. Toxic things just happen, Reketta. Nobody did that. It's just in the air. Abuse has an abuser and a victim. And not to tell you your job, because I know you know this better than me, but cycle of abuse means that sometimes victims also then become abusers, right? So it's not always like you can be both, right? And so for me, that is one of the biggest things that I say over and over again. And I think that that includes, if not especially, the way that we treat women, minorities, and Black women in particular. That when you aren't celebrating those people, when you're not hearing their voices, when you take advantage of all of the other millions of things that our system does, that you personally are the one perpetuating that and that you are the abuser in that situation. I'd love your thoughts on that.
Right. Yes, there was so much there. And I'm so happy that you were able to go a little bit further and explain where you came to, toxicity in that culture. Because I never really thought about that. I see things as there's always like that gray area and naming that there's a cycle of abuse. And yes, a victim can become the abuser. You don't have to be if you are aware of things. And that's what you were naming, I think.
Yep.
Awareness is so important. And so if you were, for example, someone that is a woman, maybe just a white woman, not just, but a white woman, you can still be an accomplice into white supremacy. And maybe you don't realize it because you see also that you're experiencing discrimination. You're experiencing that glass ceiling, but you can also be there perpetuating white supremacy. So I think that is what you are naming. And also me as a Black woman, because I'm able bodied.
Mhm.
I do live in a larger body, but I am still able bodied. So I could also be perpetuating some things for individuals who are not in the same position that I am.
Agreed. And I think I think that what you said is so true. And I get frustrated as well because I do so much work around. I do not consider myself to be a DEI expert by any means. I have amazing people in my network that I call on for that institutional work. But I can at least tell you what is an actively discriminatory practice, right? And I can do some work that way. And I think one of the things I get really damn frustrated with, especially in interview processes, is when people talk about implicit behaviors or cultural racism. That's always people have that problem, never I have that problem. So when I talk to hiring managers, it's always, I had the training. I know this is an issue for some people. We should give them a worksheet. Nah, bitch, it's your problem. You, every single person, and me, right? I
Mm-hmm.
was raised in America, which means I was raised to think that Black men are dangerous and Black
Mm-hmm.
women are lazy and also in my face, right? Those are the things that they teach us. Bullshit. But that was what I was raised. And so part of my job as somebody who is melanin challenged is
Mm-hmm.
to absolutely every single day, anytime I have any of those things creep into my head, to rail against them, be aware and act aggressively against that in myself and when I see it in others. And I think that it is such a challenge to internalize that and to understand that it is not a problem for people. No, it is your problem for you. Why do you think it is so damn hard for people to make that leap? That they consistently, the good people that I work with, understand that it is the big problem, but they can't see or feel it in themselves. What your mental health professional, heal the world here, Reketta. What's going on?
Yes. So I'm going to speak on it as a social justice advocate. And I do want to name that for you as well. I know you said I'm not a DEI expert. I feel like I'm not either. I'm just advocating for people here, because we can all learn more. So I do want to name that. And I do want to say that a part of this is shame. Like, do you want to sit in discomfort knowing that you could be the reason why someone is experiencing the things that they are experiencing? No, you don't want that. You will push it away. And so that's definitely what people tend to do. Oh, it's not a me problem, it's a them problem, and them could be the person that is experiencing the discrimination, or it could be the people where they are just blatantly racist. But anti-racism work is a journey. You'll never be done, especially because racism in America is structural and it's systemic. It is like embedded in everything that we do. And then what I do for health is that in the healthcare system, racism is definitely embedded. Even with research that we have, Black doctors are like 3%, as far as I know, it could have increased by now. 3% of the population that we have for the healthcare field, Black individuals. But we still have 13, almost 14% of the population that is Black in America. So they can't always see a Black doctor. What we're seeing is that white doctors still ascribe to the idea that Black people don't feel pain at the same rate or as much as a white person. What if you run across this person and we have just trying to go to the doctor? You feel dismissed, you feel invalidated, you feel unheard. So I'm gonna circle back to your question because I went off on like a soapbox.
You're good. I'm loving this tangent. Tangent. Oh, you're fine.
Yes. What I'm naming is that shame can be there for some people, and they don't want that. And also, wanting to be the better person, we always want to feel like we are the hero because that's how we grew up. We grew up on the Disney stories. We grew up in Marvel and all of those things. We always want to be the hero of a story. I tend to see people say, I'm not a racist. Okay, how do you determine whether or not you are not a racist? I don't know if there's like some type of guideline or some kind of guidebook that you read, and it says,
I checked my label, and it says very clearly.
Yes. So you give yourself, you have bestowed upon yourself that you are not a racist. When in actuality, people are telling you, yes, you are. Sorry to tell you that, maybe you don't want to hear that, maybe, but you can do some work.
So you said so much in all of that, and I know that the racism work within the healthcare sector is particularly a thing for you. So let's go there. I was talking to my friend the other day, and he was talking about he's going through some drama in his life and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I mean, this is why I have a therapist, like they make those. You can pay people. You don't have to sit here with me and ruin our noodle lunch to tell me all this. And he looked at me and he laughed, Reketta, and he goes, Michelle, Black people don't go to therapy. I was like, well, that is sad. And also feels like a sweeping generalization.
Mm-hmm.
But I know he's not the only place I have heard that. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about unpack that for me. Where does that come from? What does that look like? How do we get there?
Yes. Okay. So there is so much to unpack. I do want to say, because of gatekeeping, that's one. We don't have as many therapists out here in the world, therapists of color out here. It's also a slim margin.
And Black people are more likely to not have insurance that pays for therapy. So there's also that.
Right.
There's
also that.
I get
live
that
in
too.
Healthcare desert.
Right.
So I don't know. Y'all are still in that Texas area, so maybe yes, there is a possibility that there could be a plethora of therapists of color for your friend to see. I would love to get to know this friend because there is a stigma there, though. It's definitely a stigma. My own personal life, I remember I was postpartum with my first child, and I mentioned to my mom that I was going to see a therapist. She's like, okay, we were on the phone. She got off the phone and she messaged me and said, oh my God, are you also taking medicine too? Like there was that stigma for her. So there's still a huge stigma, in our community. But caveat there is that it was not just us coming around and saying, we don't need therapy. It has been indoctrinated in us. You're so strong. You don't need anyone. You're resilient. All of the things. It's like toxic positivity. When in actuality, we do need to unpack. We do need to have someone, sit us down and say, what was it like? What are your traumas? Family of origin stuff. That because it affects our relationships, and that's also a part of health too. Like if you were trying to have a relationship, a romantic one or platonic with someone, and your traumas, your past history, your ancestral traumas are still upon you, you might put that upon your partner if you're not aware of what's happening.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. I think that like all of those things that we just talked about, right? Like lack of access, cultural, like we put so much pressure, especially on Black women, right? Strong Black woman, right? Never just keep piling it on, and she just keeps one foot after the other, like, and which is obviously bullshit. Everybody needs support. Nobody, as you said, is a superhero. I love that. I I think that is so integral. So as somebody, is there anything that I can do as somebody not from that community to help the people that I engage with and love, to help to break through those things? Or is that work for the community, do you think?
It's both.
Okay.
I'm going to say, as a person that might not be melanated, it is your job to unpack what could be potentially racist ideas and ideologies with either your therapist or a person of color that is in that space, you know.
Right.
But the caveat with that is we don't want to do the emotional labor. So maybe your friend and you can't unpack that because you guys have a relationship already. You know, just being aware of how much or how far we can go. I really feel like it is important that white people do have friends of color. That is important so that you don't go into another space and place that emotional labor on someone. I just want to name that. And also, it is upon our community to do the work that we have to do in order to be aware of how much of this stuff is not ours and how much of this stuff is ours, and how can we work on the things that, you know, is ours. You know, I think that's so important right there, because we would like to cover the wagon, not talk about things, don't air dirty laundry. What happens is it continues, and there's a cycle, and there's intergenerational trauma. We do need to unpack. We do need to sit down and say how much of this we need to work on so that we can feel comfortable in our bodies and sit with discomfort if we need to.
And I love all of those things. For me, I, as an ally, like, I get my racism is not only becomes your problem when I'm not dealing with it. And I should not let my racism be your problem, right? I need to go find my own resources, do my own work. And that is what being a good ally is about, is, you know, like my friend Madison says, Google is free. So for me to go do my own Google work, to find my own books on anti-racism, like, the literature is out there. It is not your job to give me a reading list. That is my job. And then I need to get a therapist, which I have, to unpack all that shit with. I totally get that. I also want to make the world right and just for everybody yesterday. And so I struggle sometimes, like, I'm a mom, right? We fix shit. That's what we do. They come to us and, like, we're hungry, we find a snack. They skin their knee, we make it better. My friend's like, I don't feel as a Black man that I can go to therapy. I want to fix it. But I also know I need to stay the hell in my lane, and that people in that community have had quite enough of people who look like me telling them how to live their life and what to do. Thank you very much. And so finding the balance for those things, I think, is tricky. And so for me, that's, I think, one of the things that I struggle with. Like, I I would never put the labor on. If I put the labor on my friends to help me not be a racist asshole, they wouldn't be my friends, right? For very long. And B, that's just as almost as bad as being a racist asshole. Like, I totally get those things. But like I say, it's just the wanting to help. And I don't think I'm alone. I think I've seen other people who are like, oh, I want to help you. And then the clapback is, thank you for the intent, maybe, but also shut the hell up. So help me and other people like me understand where our lane is and how we can support and uplift without being directive and sticking our nose in.
Yes. So what comes to mind for me, and this is loosely quoted, is that Audre Lorde quote that says that you cannot use the same tools that was meant to build the master's house. So all that to me means whatever you guys are coming up with, thinking that you can help, stop. Because those tools are the reason why we're here today. So yes, just stop. And that's why a lot of people are like, yeah, no thanks. It's actually coming in and saying, well, this is your space. How can I help? The spaces will be different because I'm in Alaska right now. A Black woman in Alaska would need something different from a Black woman in Chicago.
You're like the only one. Like,
yes, we do have a kind of a large population, believe it or not. I was shocked too. But yes, so you have to look at things that way, and also your help might not be the help that we need. I know you want to help, and again, it goes back to a few things that we are naming. You have a friend. Have those conversations. You have a resource right there. Those conversations are so important. I think I am also a sex therapist. Two things I know about people. We don't like talking about race and we don't like talking about sex. Okay, not all of us. A lot of people.
I was going to say, some of us are perfectly fine with both.
Right.
Reketta, like, let's go. But yes, I get it.
So then you got to have the conversations. You got to be like that. If that's truly going to be your friend, you got to, hey, friend, what's up? How can I be a true ally or a friend? And so for me, as a cis hetero Black woman, I feel like I can't even be in the space of someone in the LGBTQIA queer space. I can't be that person who's like, I'm an ally, because there's so much that I don't know. But I still want to be there and pull up when I need to. I still want to be like, listen, if somebody steps to you or I hear something that's out of pocket, I'm going to check them. That's just how I see the world. So I hope I answered a few of your questions because we had a lot to unpack.
I know. And I do. Like, obviously, as a friend, like, we sit there and talk about that. And I'm like, in his individual circumstance. But I also do understand either. And because, I have a lot of friends from a lot of different backgrounds, and we're very candid. They're happy to say, like, we're overstepping. And I do the same, right? So as much as I am pale, I am also Native. And so when people try to tell me what my experience is and what that means, I'm also like, oh, no. So I do have some like understanding and alignment, from that perspective as well. So one of the things I want to talk about, because it's so on everybody's mind right now with regards to healthcare. Like, I don't feel like you can talk in 2022 about healthcare and not talk about the pandemic, right? And so there's such a horrible history of treatment of Black people with regards to vaccine technology, not to mention with regards to the medical industry in general, that there is a real problem with trust. And then you turn around and you have companies that have vaccine mandates for you to keep your job. And those companies tend to be owned by white men, cis hetero white men, right? Like, so now you have institutional racism is now forcing me to do this thing that in the past has been bad. At the same time, we have a need for public safety. It's hard. It's a tightrope. Help me unpack that and talk to me about those conflicting needs and kind of what your thoughts are on all that.
Oh, that is great and a lot to unpack. You named the medical racism and how systemic it is, and how when Black individuals and even Indigenous individuals were enslaved, we were used and forced to participate in experiments without our consent in order for medical whatever to move up in the world, technology to get the things. Henrietta Lacks, and they had a book out on her. They also had an HBO film on her, and how she And her cells are actually what we use for a lot of these vaccines. And then we also know about the Tuskegee experiment that took place, about that. So much that we know about. And there's still more that you can know. There's a few books, Medical Apartheid, that's out there. I'm sorry that I can't remember the author's name. I know her last name was Williams, but Medical Apartheid is the book. The conflict comes into play when everybody is staring at Black people saying, we know y'all don't trust the medical industry, but what y'all gonna do about it, or how y'all feel? Let us work through that. Let's see. Let's have a dialogue, and then we'll get back to you. I feel like everybody is always, when I say everybody, I'm just gonna say white people. White people tend to turn and look at us and say, we know this is a problem. What y'all gonna do? Give us some time, and then we'll see what we're gonna do. Because I think the majority of us are like, yeah, we do distrust what's going on, but we're weighing the pros, we're weighing the cons, and we're seeing like this could be a thing that we need to get into. And that's not everybody. Because Black people are not a monolith. Same as white people. I think that's what I am truly naming. Is that when people turn to Black people and say, what y'all gonna do? It's a lot of y'all. It's a lot of us, and we have different opinions and different things that we have on the table. So some of us will, some of us won't.
And I think that what's really frustrating to me about that whole turning and saying, what are y'all going to do, is it implies that you have the tools and the agency to be able to affect the systemic change, to affect that top-down change that's required. Like, institutional racism made sure that didn't happen, right? You guys, in general, the Black community does not own the businesses. They're not the CEOs. They're not the VPs of HR or whoever it is that's making the decision about requiring this level of engagement in order to continue to earn a living. And yet, so you don't have a seat at the table for that. And then at the same time, it's a choiceless choice, right? And I think that is the ultimate crux of how fucked up the whole situation is. And it's so, to me, the answer is, when you made this decision to do this, how many Black people did y'all ask?
Right.
How did you involve the community? How did you make sure that there was trust? You've got 1,000 other things that you have exemptions for, right? Religious preference, etc. How about how many 100 years of oppression and counting? Does that count as a box? Like, to me, that emotionally makes sense. My practical brain says everybody just needs to shut up and go get the vaccine because I don't want anybody getting sick. But I also know that's not fair and that's not reasonable in a complex society.
Right. Everything is not going to be in that Black or white spectrum area. I'm always in that gray area. That's just how we have to walk with whatever we have going on. Yes, in this institutional racism, yes. Yes, vaccines save lives. Yes to all of that. So now we're here. We got to meet somewhere. We got to try to align. And that's going to be complex and complicated. So I hear you on that. And I also want to say, you named it's a choiceless choice. If I'm the way that I feel like you're using that, I feel like we as, and I'm going to speak to just me and my ancestral history, we have made plenty of choiceless choices.
But we want to stop them. We want to start having real choice.
We would love to. We totally would love to, but it's going to take us some time because it's a lot. It is a lot. And I think realistically, being aware, first of all, I think I named that several times. Yeah. Okay, what do we have on the table right now? What can we fix in the next 5 to 10 years? And what's going to take another generation?
I'm not patient though, Reketta. I want it all fixed yesterday. That's where I'm at. I just want all the bullshit to be done. My oldest son,
Yes.
you know, his favorite colors are glitter and rainbow. Bless him.
Oh.
And he's the cutest. But we live in Texas, so I'm ready
Yeah.
for that fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's he's a quarter native. His paternal grandfather calls him a half breed. I'm ready for that fight. But I'm just it feels like in 2022 we all should know better. And I just don't understand why we persist in pretending like everything is fine. Like that meme that kept going around in 2020 with like the little cartoon dog and the house is on fire and he's like, this is fine. Like I feel like that's where we are and where we keep expecting, especially Black people, to be. They're like, okay, well, we had the Black Lives Matter protest and we heard that. So we're good now, right? No. No. I had somebody the other day. So my profile picture on LinkedIn is me in my Black Lives Matter mask. And I actually had somebody the other day reach out and be like, don't you think that's getting a little dated?
Ooh.
I was like, oh, we clearly don't have very much in common. No, it is not. And it was like everything in me to not be like, here is a list of reasons why no, it is not. And it's crazy. And then at the same time, there's the studies that came out about the myths within the medical profession about Black people don't feel pain. Black women, all of the Black women don't experience pain at birth. What? You were squeezing a watermelon out of a lemon. Of course it hurts like hell. What? And don't give me that pressure bullshit, because nah. Like, I mean, it's insane to me in 2022 that we're still having this. And I hear what you're saying, that like I gotta just, put on my patience and know and carry the conversation and know that it will get better generationally. But if I'm frustrated,
But that's not what I'm saying, though. I feel like I'm also like I'm saying the droplets that you feel. I mean, because I'm calling them droplets, because that's what I'm hearing. Like, well, I'm talking to my friend and I'm doing this. Those matter. Everything that you do, it matters. You still having the Black Lives Matter mask on, and it's 2022, and someone came to you and said, "Hey, don't you think that's getting old?" That opened up the conversation, and if you wanted to, you could have had a conversation. That stuff matters. I'm not just saying that to pacify someone. What I'm saying is the fight is long and it's hard.
this is true.
Black people know this. White
Better than
people are the
most.
ones who are just like, it didn't immediately happen, because that's what they're kind of used to. White people are used to doing something and magically it just falls into their lap. I don't know what it is, like a magical fairy that comes down.
That's what we need, Reketta, is the magical justice fairy who comes down and waves her wand and just fixes some shit. I am all about the magical justice fairy. That is my new favorite idea. I'm in.
Yes.
Oh, my days. So your specialty in your clinic is working with parents, including parents who have grieved, who are grieving loss of child and 1,000 other things, right? Talk to me about that, because you have so many kind of, I see puzzle pieces clicking together, right? In terms of your expertise, right? Sex therapists, parents, working with them, and then also advocate for racial justice and equity in healthcare all at the same time. But talk to me from your perspective, how all of this came to be and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, you're right. I'm seeing the theme too, Michelle, is that I'm going to be like, we need to talk about this. Let's have a conversation. You know, with bereaved parents, no one wants to have those conversations. Everybody is so uncomfortable, especially when it is an infant. You know, no one wants to have a conversation.
No one knows what to say. Yeah.
No one knows what to say. There's no word for you to call a parent that has lost a child. You know, we have a word for a child that has lost a parent. You know, so there's that. And what we are seeing is like the infant mortality rate is very high for Black and Indigenous individuals. That's also the case for several reasons. I don't want to get into so much because I want to continue to answer your question. I am trying to open up the conversation for us when it comes to taboo things, taboo topics, because I think people feel that shame piece and avoidance. If we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist, but it still exists for many of us, so many of us.
Agreed. I think so. First of all, I have a new great idea. You and I are going to start a new podcast called No Brunos. And we're going to talk about every goddamn thing that people don't want to talk about. And that's going to be our podcast. And I think it'll be great. I'm in.
Yes.
Second thing I think about that, specifically, I think about the infant mortality rate. I think from a personal perspective, when I had my first son, I had my postpartum took the version of absolute terror over SIDS. Like I would just lay all night staring at him to make sure he was breathing. And a big part of that was because I know that Native American and Blacks have the highest percentage of SIDS. And I was terrified. And that's as an educated woman who's only half Native, right? Like, and I know my terror there, and I can only imagine. And I also obviously give no fucks about talking about whatever when I need to. But there is so much shame, and there is so much concern, and there is so many, so many people who let's not look there. When I talk to my sister about it, my sister is obviously also half Native, and her husband is Hispanic. That's really, again, very high demographic for SIDS. I was like, aren't you scared? Don't you worry? And she was like, I just don't go there. Because if you go there, there's nothing but fear. And I hear that I agree with you that there's so many things for parents, and so much of it is tied to race and is tied to circumstance that is scary, and it's like we're not allowed to talk about it. I totally agree.
Right. Can I just step in? Because you being of the Indigenous culture, there are so many things that I've learned. Like I said, I'm a Black woman, but I do speak. I want to make sure I open the space, but I make sure also that we need to get that stuff out there when it comes to not just Black women and our maternity rate. And I want to say birthing persons, so some people might identify as other than a woman and still give birth. But Indigenous birthing persons are experiencing medical deserts, maternal medical deserts, especially here in Alaska. Also, think about what are they walking back into when they get home? First of all, they have to be removed here from their village in order to get to a place where they do have a professional there, a medical professional, when in actuality, here's something about systemic racism. They had midwives. We had midwives as Black women, as Black birthing persons, but that was taken from us because they said that, oh, it's dirty, it's not sterile, you don't need to do that. So our ability and our rights to stay in our home and use traditional practices was taken from us. Black and Indigenous people have that in mind, and that's why I love to talk about this, because we have things in common because of white supremacy.
Absolutely.
Oh, did I answer? Where was I going? So really quickly, I was trying to say that when I hear you when you said, "Well, I'm scared." What if you had like your indigenous grandma, your indigenous auntie right there with you, helping you, taking care of you, because we all need to be taken care of in that postpartum period, making sure baby is okay, you're sleeping, and all the things that we don't really get anymore because it was ripped from us, taken away from us. And now all we have is, that anxiety that lingers.
I agree. It's part of the whitewashing, right? Like they
Yes.
strip the culture, they strip the
Yes.
connectivity, and all you get left is, this whitewashed version of everything. I totally agree. And I also
Yes.
do want to take the second to acknowledge, I think you're absolutely right, that when we look at why those demographics have a higher level of SIDS, I do, and I even at the time knew that it had to do with lack of medical care, lack of education around those things. But you probably even better than I do because I've only lived it, postpartum knows no logic.
Yes.
My brain fixated on those stats
Yes.
and was convinced that my baby was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it took months before I chilled out. And then I remember when he turned 2, I just sat down and cried with relief. Now, I also know better. I know that SIDS is about developmental stages and weight, and it's not like that 2 is a magic number, right?
Right.
My child was like 40 pounds when he turned 2, Reketta. I do not have small babies. My
Mm-hmm.
kid had been fine, right? And which the
Mm-hmm.
doctor told me on the regular. He was like, "Your children are tanks. They are fine."
Mm-hmm.
Like I swear Dr. Lewis could just have it like as a recording every time I call him with a crazy mom complaint. Your children are tanks. They are fine. And it would be like he'd be right 90% of the time, right? But it's it's not rational. It's not. And I think that there is not a good place for us to go. And I think that there's also not a good place for us to go where, to your point about community, to your point about that connectivity with our race and our heritage, there is a difference. I think there would have been a difference for me talking to other Native moms and saying, I'm scared shitless of this number, aren't you? Like how I tried to reach out to
Right.
my sister. Often reaching out to my sister is fruitless. But this is definitely one of those times. But it would have been a specific support group with
Right.
those issues, I think, would have been really huge
Yes.
from my experience. And we just I think that medical science is so bad about focusing on the science and not remembering that we're treating humans and that
Mm-hmm.
humans live in context. They live in the context of their community and their history and their experiences. And you want to say something smart, so go.
Great. No, I was just going to say preach because you got it. I was going to say, and no shade to Dr. Lewis, maybe a little, but him maybe knowing that you have these ideas of behind baby not being safe because of the things that you've read, just being in community with you and validating that experience and not just saying your baby's a tank, but yeah, I know the numbers are, out there. Totally know that. But let me tell you, so far we're good. You're doing the right thing. Just being in community with you that way, reassuring you that way, not being dismissive. I know we're just telling
I
you
am
things from your
diminishing what
narrative.
he said. He did do more
Yes.
than that. He is a good
Okay, I
guy.
just
He
want to
did
make
those
sure.
things
But a lot
too.
of
Yeah.
doctors don't. They only
Yes.
see you with the numbers, like you named. They only
Oh,
see you with the numbers.
I totally. So when I first had him, he had some issues with latch, and so he wasn't like hitting his early milestones, blah blah blah. And I remember I went in, and like the first doctor we had, who is no longer our doctor, would just weigh him and look at me with side eye while she was typing and be like, well, he's not hitting where he needs to be. And I'm like, here is the list of things I am doing. And she was like, well, you just need to put him on formula. I was like, he's like 2 weeks old. And what was the final straw for me was when she measured his head, and she said, oh, his head's a little large for his size. And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, well, we'll measure it again next time. You don't say that to a new mama.
You
I'm like, my baby's
don't.
head's a little too big, and that's a problem. What do I even do about too big of a head? How do I need to like put it in a helmet? Like what? Do I control that?
What's
And I
that?
was freaking out, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
mercifully in my village have several great lactation consultants and baby experts. And I called and say, oh, the baby's head is too big. Apparently that's the problem. They're like, your doctor is awful if she said that. If your baby's head being too big were a thing, like it would have been from birth. Like this is not like it
Mm-hmm.
sneaks up on you. They're like, babies' parts grow at different paces. Like it's fine, and shame on her for making you feel like it's not. And so like for me, that's one of those like that is why we don't go there. But I think that is exactly your point, right? That she was just reading a chart, and she didn't notice or seem to care that she was freaking out a new mom, and a new mom who was already struggling with other things, and she wasn't looking at the person, she was looking at a chart. And that I
Exactly.
think is exactly what you work so hard against in most of your work, right? Is
Yes.
look
Yes.
at people.
Look at people. Know their background. Be in community. So important.
So I cannot believe this, but we are almost out of time because you're amazing. I'm very excited for our upcoming podcast, No Brunos. So before I let you go, what did I not ask you that I should have asked? Obviously, we'll have links to
Yes.
Aspire and all of the things so that people can find you and use your amazing services. But what else do they need to know? What else do we need to talk about?
You can follow me on all my socials on LinkedIn, because I am going to, if you are a provider, a white provider, I am providing a webinar series in order for you to get more comfortable with having conversations with your clients of color, your BIPOC clients. And also, if you are a provider of color and you're listening to this, I offer affinity groups so that we can be in community, because we not only receive vicarious trauma from what we see placed in the medical field, but we also carry our own trauma. So that is also going to be there on the socials. So get with me in the link, and I will see you there.
That sounds amazing. We'll have links to all of those things so people can join in and learn and embrace the community. Thank you so much. This has been great. You're amazing.
Thank you for having me. I love the girlfriend chat. That's what I feel like this was.
No problem. You've been listening to Hey, I Want Your Job. For more information on how you can get your own awesome job, visit ONH Consulting at www.onhconsulting.com. We offer incredible resumes, no-nonsense career advice, and real-world tips for landing a job in today's market. Check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Insta for more insider information. Soon, you'll be hearing us say, I'm Michelle Olivier, and hey, I want your job.